Hi, I'd love to be able to take you through my entire creator journey because, believe it or not, I could never have imagined where I am today. I never thought that I would be a creator. I never thought that this would be a line of work for me. I never thought that I'd go on to build multiple creator businesses. I didn't even know what that was. So, if I was to start from day zero, if I was to give you the full context of where I was, heading into my freshman year of college, I was never someone that posted on social media. At most, it would be once a year. And I didn't even know how to use the app. Wouldn't necessarily even consume much content on there. And it was all very much because I had this preconceived notion about what social media was. I had this impression that it was only meant for the rich to flaunt off their lifestyles. And you would often hear the term traditional influencer. And that didn't necessarily align with me. And it was shocking because when then in my freshman year of college, TikTok blew up. It completely revolutionized the social media game. If you imagine, if we could all go back there in time and remember what it actually was like when YouTube was the only dominant place, or if we're looking at Instagram, how it was only static imagery as the main feed of content, how only the traditional influencers, if you had a lot of followers, you would just continuously dominate that platform. And then when TikTok came around, for the very first time, there were people that looked like me, people that didn't look like they had it all figured out, people that were also my age, people that were in the traditional route of going to school, and people that literally were also coming from poor backgrounds and just sharing their journey. And I felt that that was so much more enticing. So I became an avid user of TikTok, and I believe all of us had at that period of time. And the more I consumed the content there, the more I realized maybe this is something that I could do. And I remember when I first made that decision, I'm somebody that I will never do something unless I will put my full effort into it. I thought, you know what? Everyone seems to be doing it. I should try and maximize this experience and give it a shot. And I did. I first posted about fashion content, and that probably blows your mind to think about because if you know my content now, it's so far away from that. And I would literally wear my brother's clothes because he was into fashion. I thought that was the cool thing to do. And I would use it for styling videos inside of my basement. I had no idea how to film a video. To be honest, I would rarely ever actually even go to my camera roll and click video. And then I had to think about lighting. And then I will, to this day, look back at those videos and cringe just a little bit because I thought I was really cool in that experience. And I would be hitting these different poses and the lighting would go down because we had these windows in the basement that it was my only source of light. And I would be in that experience. And after 3 or 4 hours, I would finally get this video out and I'd get it out and it would get 100 views, 120 views, 130 views. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. So this is what it's like. Well, I'm not going to give up. So I just kept doing it. So I kept doing more and more fashion videos because, again, I thought that was the cool thing to do. And there were a lot of comments about, okay, cool outfits, and a lot of them were people that I knew. And I started to one day think of content differently. And it was simply because of one post. I was in this emotional state where I was overwhelmed with a lot of my current situation. For those that don't know, my parents are divorced and they went through a very nasty one. And it was overnight. My parents had literally went from happy home to then my mom leaving to Korea to live there forever. And I lost contact with her for literally 5, 6 years in. And then during this phase of time, I was going through that experience. And then moreover, I was starting to try and make some new friends in college. And that was a very, 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 very bad experience too. When I was in that, I started to pick up my phone and declare a encouraging message that I would have personally needed in that moment. It was literally just in my car, no fancy lighting, no nothing. It was just my phone. And I just said what I wanted to say. And I finished up, I posted it, didn't really think too much about it. And the next day I woke up and that video had 4,000 views, 5,000 views, 6,000 views. And that's significantly more than the hundreds that I was getting with my fashion videos. And that started to make me think, what did I do differently? And you don't have to be an expert in content to see the differences between the comments, right? In my fashion videos, you saw the fire emoji and cool outfit. And in this one, you saw people say, wow, this really helped me. Wow, I really need to hear this. wow, TikTok really knows what I'm going through. And those comments inherently made me believe that I was making more of an impact. So that completely changed the experience because I was spending significantly more time on the fashion videos, right? 3, 4, 5 hours putting together editing sounds. I didn't even know how to edit at all, really going into it. And then I pick up my phone for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, put a video out and it's doing well. And I'm starting to think, how do I then replicate this success? And that's what I ended up thinking about content. It was much less about the production level. It was significantly more about how do I help the other person on the screen, treating them like they are people that are going through real human experiences. And if I can call to those emotions and help, then great. Well, it seems as though I'm winning because my content is performing better, and also the people behind the screen are also winning because I'm helping them, right? That is the light bulb moment. And it becomes a little bit obvious now that I say it aloud. But if you don't have any experience creating content, you may not know that. You may go into it thinking, I need to hop into what's cool. I need to hop into the fashion or the fitness content because that's what everyone else is doing. And you forget to realize that you inherently have a story. You inherently have these painful experiences that you've gone through. And you could throw a rock and hit somebody near your vicinity that is going through that same experience. And you can call to them. That is how you start to build a very loyal community up front. So I'm in the midst of posting these videos. And when I was in this phase, I really did everything I possibly could to never go to my actual home page where you have your number of followers, et cetera, on there, because I'd hear all these stories of how people would get overconsumed with those vanity metrics. And I was smart enough to recognize that early on. So I would literally, if I had to go onto it, I would block that number and I would just keep posting. That's all I could control. I could control showing up daily, and it was a lot, right? I was getting both my bachelor's and master's in biomedical engineering simultaneously. I had a neuroengineering concentration. My workload was intense, but still showing up regularly. And then I started to hear some commentary from the people nearby, right? When you're first posting, only the individuals that have really interacted with your content will still see it, especially if you are posting on a new platform like TikTok. It's different if I was posting on Instagram, but on TikTok, it was mostly just a few online friends that I knew would support. And then I started to recognize in my local group chats that people will paste my videos in there and say very passive aggressive commentary about, hey, June, don't you think you're trying too hard? Or June, this is a little bit cringy, don't you think? And again, I'll be the first to admit when I go back, yes, it was. But to hear that from your local group when you're trying your very best is disheartening at the very least, right? And they would continuously make those statements. They would continuously make statements like, oh, you're still giving that influencer thing a try. I remember very clearly, by the way, this was also during remote schooling because of quarantine. And I remember someone had pasted one of my videos into a class on Zoom. And then everyone started making fun of it. And this was in a live classroom setting. And it really, really made me insecure about the content I was producing. But at a certain point, I can't let their words impact how I lead my life. And therefore, all I was doing was still showing up regularly and trying to block out the noise. And then it was only at this point in time in which I did end up looking at my numbers because there was so much more commentary from the people local to me. And that's when I did start to see that I was at 10,000 plus, 12,000, 13,000, 4,000, 14,000. And I think one of the greatest pursuits of growth is when it's slow and steady. Now, when I look back, I'm so grateful that was the case. I often find people really glorify this accelerated pace. If they hit that exponential rate and they go viral, they think that's success. But to actually build a community slow and steady was my winning formula. And I would continuously be getting better at the production of content. And when I say production, I don't mean higher quality in regards to getting a better camera setup or better lighting. I simply meant I knew how to provide more value into that video. I knew then exactly who my audiences were. I exactly knew what started to work. And when you hit that 10,000 plus follower, you have so much of a body of work because you've been consistent that you can start to extrapolate the common threads. And I was doubling down on what had worked, and I kept growing and I kept growing. I kept growing. Then I thought I was past the judgment, but Instagram Reels was birthed about 2 years into me creating content. I went to Instagram at this period of time, started repurposing my content there. And that's when a lot of my local people there was my main hub, right? So everyone's starting to see that content. I start to lose a ton of followers, right? A lot of the people that were supposed to be friends of mine were either leaving nasty comments or not engaging or just removing themselves as followers. And that hurt a little bit too. And I thought I was over it. And the more it happened, the more I realized, yeah, it was impacting me mentally. But all I could do again was the same formula that I was doing on TikTok, which was showing up every single day. So I would keep posting, keep posting, keep posting. And eventually that decrease in following was superseded by the new followers that are coming in. And then the comments on my posts were a lot more encouraging and supportive because those new followers actually engaged with the content and they found value in that. So then I fell in love with this process. I really did. And again, I never called myself an influencer at that point in time. And to be honest, if you were to have asked me back then, hey, what do you do on the side as a hobby? I would have probably never even brought this up because there was still a level of embarrassment associated with it and with complete brutal honesty for those individuals that are probably in that experience now. It's normal, right? Like none of this stuff is something that we are taught to do when we're younger. I'm talking to a camera right now. I post and then I'm trying to continuously provide more value to you, but you're not somebody that I personally know just yet. This whole experience is abnormal and it's okay that it takes some time to get accustomed to. I was a few years in, it was still a challenge. So then I kept posting, kept posting, kept posting, kept posting. And my love for it grew deeper and deeper and deeper because then at that standpoint, I started to see people in real life that were saying things like, hey, June, this video actually helped me. I really needed this. And thank you for doing this. And people would recognize me. We'd take photos. I'm like, what's going on here? There's like a real evolution happening here in real time. And I have this incredible, powerful story that really solidified this experience for me. One of my friends in college had gone back home and he was from the California area. And he had told me in that experience when he had gone back home, once he was updating me when he came back to Philadelphia, he said one of his really close friends had talked about an influencer that made a really large impact on her because she was going through a really tough experience. And to put it in a more generalized standpoint for her privacy issues, it was a mix of family problems and she was also going through a breakup. And myself, I was going through a breakup during that period of time. So I remember having posted a video that was covering that topic. And basically, this influencer had been able to provide her comfort in a very difficult season of her life. And went on to say that this influencer also took the time to message her and converse with her. And that influencer, once my friend asked about who it was me. And that, again, completely changed the experience because I thought, wait, someone across the country is talking about my content to somebody like that? She did that? That was incredibly powerful. And it really made me happy. It really made me feel that I was doing something right. And when he told me that, when my close friend told me that, he's like, you got to keep doing this thing. You got to keep impacting more people. And that's when it was a no-brainer. That's when it really started to hit home that I didn't care about the judgment around me anymore. I started to recognize that what I was trying to do was serve people that I couldn't otherwise reach. I was trying to tell myself for so long that your message is not worth hearing. But then I started to recognize people that are across the country are talking about my content in that light. That means I'm doing something right. But all I was doing was sharing my story, the experiences and the hardships that I was going through. And then somehow made someone feel less alone. That's beautiful. That's what content, I believe, should be all about. It's in service of other people. It's about realizing that you do have some sort of valuable story. And I kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And the more then the content pillars start to crystallize for me, because I start to recognize that there were common themes of my content that people were resonating with the most. So I used to double down more on those. And at this period of time, I probably grew an audience of 100,000 on Instagram, and I was growing really fast on TikTok at this point. So we might have hit like 500,000, maybe even close to 1 million in that vicinity. And I had booked a call with Sean Hanif, who's now my co-founder at Creative College. But during this period of time, I had no idea who he was. And I actually had seen Leanna Deeb's Instagram bio because we were mutuals at that point. And I had seen that she had posted a story about GenFlow, and her Instagram bio also had her email at genflow.com. And that I started to believe was a talent agency. I really had no idea what even that meant. But I went onto their website and I actually paid for a consult. And I've never done this before, but you have to imagine in my local circle in Philadelphia as a biomedical engineer, I did not have people around me that did social media, right? It was the complete opposite world, in fact. And so I start to get in this spot of, all right, I'm pouring so much of my time and energy into this. It's now been 3 years of me posting every single day. I should probably seek advice from someone that has done it before. And therefore, this talent agency might be the best route. To give you a little bit more context, at that period of time, I actually started a social media marketing agency, and I was using every little bit of experience that I had in the short form world. And I was pitching to businesses and telling them that I could help with their presence on short form mediums like Instagram, Reels, TikTok. And I was able to have my first customer, my second customer. And at that point in time, it was my first real initiative into the business landscape. I was making about $7,000, $8,000 per month. And that was a lot of money. I grew up in a poor, broken immigrant household, right? So making that type of money as a college student was significant. So I was going into this meeting thinking, I feel like I got something figured out, right? I'm making some considerable amounts of money. I'm growing an audience. And then I went into this call with Sean, and he really took that conversation in a way that I could have never imagined it. He didn't smile at me once during that period. I remember exactly what he looked like, but I was terrified, right? I've never spoken to someone in this space. And the moment I started speaking through my experience, he was telling me that I was doing it all wrong. And I thought, what do you mean? What do you mean? I've spent all this time, you're telling me done it wrong. And he was basically telling me that I've built the wrong audience, that it would be impossible for me to monetize, that brand deals were out of the question, that my demographic was wrong, that I was not posting the right type of content, that I would have no chance of selling. And he had then gone ahead and looked at, let's say, my entire body of work, right? And he was looking at, okay, so you're making money through this agency. And at that point, he told me to choose one. And I was shocked. He was saying basically, you should just literally focus on one of them because it's going to be so difficult for you to try and scale both. And obviously, I come out of that with a level of a chip on my shoulder. Like I have to prove him wrong. So I had a notebook and I was literally writing all of this stuff down and I was highlighting. And afterwards, I was reading it over and over and over and over and over again. And I kept reading and kept reading it. He followed me after that. And I was like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And so then I did. But obviously, he knows what he's talking about, right? He wouldn't be saying that if he didn't have literally experience working with all the big creators and doing that at literal mass scale. He's one of the biggest agencies in the world. And when you're looking at his portfolio, it's like, yeah, you don't really question that man. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, I got to take the critique. I got to put my ego aside and really try to build it the right way. So I did. And at that point in time, I was so heavily invested. I ended up going ahead and winning my school's entrepreneurship award, which simply means basically for 6 months, you get paid $19,000 to work on your business. So I was doing my bachelor's and master's in biomedical engineering and neuroengineering concentration. I was doing internships at top medical companies. So the reason why I'm telling you that is because I never had more than like 45 minutes per day to make my content ever at most. This award changed everything because it gave me 6 months to focus just on my social media. And I did. I was taking all of his advice and putting it into work and got better and better and better and better. Started building my own content system, started to actually outline exactly how I'm creating content, got better at it. And I literally blew up. I went from 200,000 followers at that point to many millions across Instagram to even building out a YouTube that grew. Now it's at like 700,000 subscribers. I started to go even bigger on TikTok. And that whole experience really showed me what it feels like when someone that has walked your path actually tells you what to do, right? Because it's such a guessing game, right? I was just throwing things at a wall and hoping that it would stick. For the very first time, I had someone tell me, hey, you're doing these things wrong. You should fix it. And I did it. And I kept doing it. And I actually, at that point, wanted to prove that I could actually sell something. So I tried. And I stumbled upon a Grace Beverly and Ali Abdaal interview, I believe it was. And Grace Beverly was saying basically how with a simple PDF where she was teaching a workout program, she made an insane amount of money. And I thought, okay, so the product doesn't have to be very complex as long as you have the audience and it's the right one and you can provide them deeper value. Okay, I got it. All right, let me try it. So then I built in public my very first guide. And this was all my learning experiences in biomedical engineering and in my neuroengineering concentration very specifically. And the whole thing was about your academic guide to success. And that was it. And it was called Guide to Academic Success eventually. But the whole premise was I'm going to teach you all the evidence based learning strategies based on my research. I'm going to teach you all the different productivity tips based on my research. I'm going to go ahead and show you early career development with interview tips and resume writing tips because I had this experience and I didn't know it was valuable, but I'm going to do it now that I'm building an audience based on that context. And that's where you start to find the synergy between the front end and the back end, right? The front end, which is the content everyone sees, what they gravitate towards, and the back end, the products that you develop that actually help them even further. So I was doing that. I had no idea what that meant at that time, but I was just doing it. And I kept posting on my stories about it. I was getting their feedback. I had about like 150 pages written and I realized it was too long. I started to shorten it. I didn't know what to price it at. I was asking my audience exactly, hey, how much should I price this for? I was doing it, all of that just guesswork on the fly. And it was not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. It was actually extremely difficult. But in my first week, I made $30,000. That's money that was life-changing, right? That was when I first saw that number, I was thinking to myself, did I just figure it out? Is this the medium? Is this the thing that, I feel called to do? I'm helping people at mass scale. And I can tell you a very, very personal story that I've never told publicly, but that same first launch day, so it was June 1st, and that was the exact date. And my dad sat me down at a local coffee shop early morning, and he basically told me, hey, June, I know you've been working on this for a very long period of time, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you, even if you get just one sale, or if no one buys at all. If you get two sales, just know it's worth your time and energy to invest into something. It was a beautiful message, but in the back of my head, I'm like, Dad, I'm going to get more than two sales. Like, I have to. I have to. I will make it work. And he had gone to a little family gathering, and I couldn't go because I was working on the launch. And my brother was the one to tell him, basically, June's launch went really well. It was to the point that my entire website crashed for like 3 days. And that was a pain in the tail in and of itself. But anyways, $30,000, and my dad didn't believe it until I showed him the number. And then I went on to make $100,000 plus by very first month. And then I made $100,000 again in my second month. Then I made $100,000 in my third month. And for anyone that's actually created content and built a business behind it, that's the tough part. It's easy to have a massive first launch. It's really difficult to sustain your success. And I did it. And then I had another $100,000 a month. And then I went on to eventually sign with GenFlow, and I was able to work with their incredible team. We built one together. And then I built my very first physical book right there called The Learning System. And that ranked number one on Amazon's new releases, shot my business up, made $1 million my first 10 months of selling, sold out a few times in that book, then went ahead to build out my flagship mentorship program, then went ahead to then co-found Creator College, which now has done over $825,000 in our first 103 days since launch, meaning that every stage of the way, as I went from not knowing what I was doing to then becoming a successful creatorpreneur, there was so much that I've learned throughout. And I continuously tried to be a student of this experience. And you're going to quickly learn about the mindset of being a creator. And I'm literally going to have that be the next video that you consume just because of how important I believe it is versus any tangible skill set that I can teach you. The tangible technical skills will get you that initial success. The mindset is what's actually going to make it sustainable and give you longevity as a creator. And that I truly believe in. So you have seen, and my audience has seen this, right? Go from a student that literally had no idea what he was doing, to then being a better student, to then building an audience, to then becoming a successful entrepreneur, then going ahead and graduating with both my bachelor's and master's in biomedical engineering at the top of my class with these internships at top medical companies. And I actually built a startup with one of the top medical companies called Novartis on a digital ophthalmic microscope. And my audience saw that. So I went from that full endeavor to then going into these pursuits of creator businesses. Then I went into the coolest experience ever. I became one of 5 judges for Red Bull's global entrepreneurship competition called Red Bull Basement. And if you can imagine Shark Tank on steroids for all the brightest young innovators in the world, that's what it was. So basically 40 different countries would participate, all in their respective countries first. And their finale was in Tokyo, Japan, that I got invited to be the judge of. One of 5, the youngest by far, next to AMD, Microsoft, top venture capitalist firm. So I was that person. I was like, what am I doing here? Next to an Olympian, right? So I was like, Oh my goodness. How cool is that? Like, and then I got introduced to that entire new audience. And I built that entirely in public, and I kept doing that, kept doing that, kept doing that, kept doing that. And now we're at this really successful business called Creator College. And I will be very soon, it's almost a full circle moment, actually be investing into my very first biomedical engineering company startup, which is super exciting. This is to say the creator journey looks different for everyone, but I've almost been in every single phase. And I know that every single phase, there's new challenges, new problems, new thoughts that you may have. And for me, I have the greatest joy in the entire world now being able to look at you and sit you down and say, hey, I know the hard work that you've put in. I know you want to build a purposeful brand. You don't want to be like every other creator. You actually want to go build an audience, do something meaningful, impact people, perhaps do dream brand deals, and go ahead and build businesses that you love. I can help. And I'm so happy that you're here because it's purely the greatest honor. So I hope that this story has given you context of where I've come from. And now the whole goal is to help you do the same.